The following audio-supported podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please speak with your healthcare professional before making any treatment decisions. The guests on today's show were paid to participate in this podcast.
Hey Thal Pals, it's NinaMaria, your patient advocate and host of Thal Pals, the Alpha Beta Revolution. Welcome back to the show. I'm flying solo today as my co-host, Dr. Kevin Kuo, is busy seeing patients, doing his thing. But we've got another special two-part episode for you coming up right now. Today, my guest is Tamara Shryver. Tamara is the president of the Thrive with Pyruvate Kinase Deficiency organization. She's a mom, nutrition scientist, and self-described documentary junkie. She's here to answer questions on nutrition. And if you're looking for practical tips to improve your life, these next two episodes are just for you.
Agios is a biopharmaceutical company that's fueled by connections with patient communities, healthcare professionals, partners, and each other. Building on these connections and the company's unmatched leadership in PK activation, Agios is pioneering therapies for rare blood disorders, including sickle cell disease, thalassemia, and PK deficiency. To learn more, visit us at agios.com. That's agios.com. To join the conversation with other patient allies, follow us on Instagram at Ally Voices Rising.
Tamara, welcome to Thal Pals. I'm super excited to have you on today. You and I know each other already from the Red Cell Revolution, which is a group formed by Agios with the initiative to find solutions to issues impacting those with thalassemia, sickle cell, and pyruvate kinase deficiency, which is also known as PKD. As you and I know, while these three rare hemolytic anemias are very different, there's also a lot of overlap in what patients experience. So before we get into nutrition, can you just inform our listeners a little bit about PKD if they don't know anything about it?
Sure. PKD is a rare hemolytic anemia, and like the name sounds, people with PKD lack the enzyme pyruvate kinase, and so our disease is called pyruvate kinase deficiency. We lack that enzyme. So without that enzyme, our red blood cells break easily, and so we have red blood cells that are making, breaking, and that causes us to be anemic. So that's really a short and dirty version of why we have anemia, and we have a lot of the same types of problems that people with thalassemia and sickle cell have. It's just basically a hemolytic anemia.
And can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your work?
Okay. So what I, in my past life, was, and I still am because I keep up my credentials as a registered dietitian. I have a PhD in nutrition, and currently I work as a founder of a nonprofit. And so my interest is in continuing advocacy and awareness for PK deficiency. And I'm interested in how health and nutrition can help people that have hemolytic anemias feel better. So while we have a lot of tools that might be like medicine or blood transfusions, on top of it, we can optimize nutrition to help our daily lives be healthier and feel better in the moment. So that's another interest of mine.
What is your relationship with nutrition? How has it become so important to you?
Recently, I've been working with the Thalassemia International Federation to put together some guidelines on how nutrition can improve the lives of people with thalassemia and pyruvate kinase deficiency. So we put together and published guidelines last winter, and then this spring, and I need to really mention some of the key players. Ellen Fung is an expert. She's a dietitian and a researcher out of San Francisco Bay Area. So she's an expert in thalassemia. And then I've been researching the area of PKD and how nutrition, like evidence-based nutrition, can improve the lives of PKD. And we worked together with TIFF to come up with these guidelines and publish them for care providers. And then also we've both done some sort of practical tips for people that have these diseases. So that's been our interest, is to put this information in writing so that caregivers and people with these diseases have that information available.
That's awesome and super important. So let's dig into it a little bit.
Okay.
What is the importance of nutrition when it comes to patients with Thal and these other hemolytic anemias?
Let's start with why. Why do we even need to talk about this? I think one reason is that people with Thal and PKD might have just reduced, they don't eat as much. There's a lot of different reasons, but some people might not eat as much, might have increased energy needs because they're anemic, and they might have more demand for calories because their bodies are working harder than typical bodies who aren't anemic. Or another reason might be what they're eating isn't the best choice, so they might not be eating a nutrient-dense diet. And the word nutrient-dense is another word for saying that the calories that you're choosing, we want to make sure those calories are full of healthy nutrients. In other words, they're not junk food. Making sure that the calories that you eat in a day have lots of vitamins and minerals and healthy fats and lean proteins for your bodies instead of just like sugar and fat. So sometimes people don't eat nutrient-dense calories, and that causes problems. And then I did mention that anemia can increase your demands for energy. We have a population that has learned that tea inhibits iron absorption, which is great. But if you're drinking tea as a child, or if you're drinking pop, or if you're drinking anything but milk as a child, then you're not getting calcium for your bones. And that's a big problem. It's a big problem throughout the world, really, the United States, Europe, and India. And then sometimes the medications that we take, like chelators, they can cause nausea, and that might make it so that people don't eat enough or get enough of the nutrients they need. And then chelation medications, they cause us to be short on trace minerals like zinc. And then the final reason, people with PKD and thalassemia might have severe iron overload. And when you have severe iron overload, it's like an oxidant in your body that is just like a free radical that's causing damage within your body. And you need more antioxidants. And sometimes you might not have enough of those antioxidants like vitamin E, C, selenium, and zinc. Not only are they good antioxidants, but they also help you with other things like growth and immunity. So it's a long list. I realize it, but that's why people with these diseases suffer from deficiencies.
As you said, it's super intensive and important, right? For many reasons, as you just said. So let's try to pick this apart a little bit and categorize it and make it simple. First, before we dig into specifics, I think it's important that we know you should always talk to a doctor before incorporating any kind of supplements or changes into your diet. Can you speak on that really quickly about why this is of such importance?
Sure. When it comes to supplements, first of all, we always try to eat foods with nutrients. So that's pretty much a rule of thumb. There are some supplements that we do think are hard to get in the diet, and one of those is vitamin D. So your doctor will probably test you for your vitamin D status and probably recommend that. And even as a dietitian, we would probably recommend that you get vitamin D. And then another supplement that you might want to bring up to your doctor is zinc, because it is so important. But that's one to talk to your doctor about. And vitamin C, if you're on chelators, is another vitamin that you may want to talk to your doctor about. But in general, the idea is to eat the nutrients that you need, as opposed to taking supplements. There are naturally occurring substances that come along with nutrients in food that help them to be more digestible, and they occur in the right amount that our bodies need and in the right form that our bodies need, that can't be replicated by supplements. So it's preferable to get it from food first rather than supplements. It's not to say that you can't take supplements, but it's preferable to get it from food. So really try to focus on eating nutrient-dense, healthy foods first.
That was going to be my next question, diet versus supplements. Talking about diet, are there any tips or things that we should be looking at as Thal patients in our diet, looking for or looking out for, trying to avoid, things like that?
Well, one thing that it sounds easy and it's such an easy thing to remember, and I'm going to mention this, but I really want people to think about eating around the rainbow. Eating fruits and vegetables that are all different colors, because those colors represent different phytonutrients and different vitamins and minerals. So the more that you can eat fruits and vegetables around the rainbow, the more you don't even have to think about, am I getting this vitamin and am I getting that vitamin? Just concentrate around eating around the rainbow, because then you'll naturally get the right vitamins and phytonutrients and minerals that you need if you choose fruits and vegetables around the rainbow. And then the other really easy thing to remember, but hard to do sometimes, is just eating foods that are nutrient dense and minimally processed. And sometimes that's really hard when you're running between appointments. You're like, it's easy when I'm at home, but it's hard when I'm out and about and I have kids. So just some easy stuff to bring with you are like nuts, pistachios, bananas. Just always making sure that you have some easy backup items with you if you're hungry or you need to eat a snack, because it's really easy to stop and get a hamburger or stop to get junk food that when you're hungry or whatever. And instead, you just want to remember to eat around the rainbow and eat something minimally processed. So that's why it's better to prepare in advance with some of these healthier, nutrient-dense foods.
So always be prepared. Have your snacks ready to go in your bag.
And I think another thing is meal preparation is, so again, eating around the rainbow and eating nutrient-dense, minimally processed foods. One of the areas that I think people fall down on, and I do myself, is just meal preparation and having some sort of a plan for, okay, don't think, like this happens to me a lot, but I'm like, it's 10 minutes before we have to eat. What are we going to eat? That's not a good plan. I know what works for me is coming up with a plan a week ahead of time, or having some sort of plan to figure out how to get food that fits these criteria of nutrient-dense, minimally processed eating around the rainbow. That if you can plan ahead, that'll be a lot more beneficial.
Totally, because this should be a priority, right? Try to plan ahead and make it a priority before you get to that moment.
Before you're desperately hungry.
Exactly. When we do slip up, because we do sometimes, and we have to get something quick or we're out and about, is there a way to at least try to get some of that nutrient-rich food while we're out? Are there things we can look for in getting those quick eats?
One thing that I've tried to do myself is to go to grocery stores instead of going to fast food stores. So if you have the option of going to a grocery store instead of fast food store, or even in convenience stores, they'll have a deli section, just getting hard-boiled egg, or getting even a burrito, like a bean stuffed burrito. That's a super good choice because there's beans. Again, that's my fallback food. Anything that has beans in it is always a good choice because it's a good source of protein and fiber. And water and milk, water-milk tea are good choices for beverages. For kids, the milk and water are the super best choices that you can give them. And we really want to work on that because we're building bone in kids. And so people with thalassemia suffer from osteoporosis a lot more than their peers at an earlier age. So we need to build their bone density as much as possible, as soon as possible. Foods like cheese and yogurt, milk, those make great snacks on the go. Good choices when you're out and about. It's a challenge if somebody has lactose intolerance. So making sure that you have Lactaid if that works for you, or if you're lactose intolerant, then we might recommend a calcium supplement because it's really important to build, and vitamin D, so calcium supplement and vitamin D to build that bone density early on. So that would be another topic that I would discuss with your doctor for supplementation all through your life in kids and adults.
So is there any other big differences when it comes to nutrition with kids versus adults with Thal that we should be paying attention to?
I think one thing is that kids with thalassemia and PKD are at risk of delayed puberty, and it's complicated in terms of their hormone production, what age that they go through puberty. And a lot of it has to do with iron overload. So a lot of what people that have PKD and Thal go through are secondary results of iron overload. So I'm going to talk about iron overload as opposed to just puberty, because iron overload can cause so many comorbidities. And so I'm not going to go in the comorbidities direction because I'm hoping that our listeners can understand what they are. But let's just talk about iron overload in general. So if you have a person with PKD or Thal that is being transfused and is on chelators, and they're following their chelation regimen faithfully, then we pretty much tell them you don't need to worry about avoiding iron-containing foods because your chelator is taking care of it. However, if you are a PKD or Thal patient that is not being transfused and you're not on chelation, then we recommend that you avoid red meat and fortified breakfast cereals because they are iron containing. The thing about fortified breakfast cereals, you can typically find natural cereals in the natural foods aisle that aren't fortified. So you still can get your whole grain needs through breakfast cereals if you go to the natural aisles. But other mainstream cereals are generally fortified with iron. And we recommend that people that are not on chelators limit some of their iron intake, because what happens is people with Thal and PKD are getting more iron through basically iron absorption. So their hepcidin levels are making in their gut are making it so that they're better at absorbing iron. And they're also in a higher state of erythropoiesis. So they're making a lot more red blood cells that are making and breaking. So they are on a higher level of iron overload. And then we want them, except if they're kids, to be consuming tea, because tea is an inhibitor of iron absorption. So if you drink tea with your meal, that's a good thing.
Any kind of tea, or is there any specific?
Black tea is the strongest inhibitor, then green tea. And then other foods that interfere with iron absorption are like soy proteins, coffee, milk, and egg proteins, and cocoa, and also red wine. Now, if you're not a red wine drinker, don't start becoming a red wine drinker.
I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, exactly. If you do drink red wine, just know that it does inhibit iron absorption. So those are some of the active things you can do to inhibit iron absorption if you are a person that is not transfused.
So we should stay away from those items, or?
Oh, you can eat them.
We should intake them.
Yeah, they interfere with iron absorption.
Yes, that's a big one for all of us who are transfusion dependent and non-transfusion dependent.
No, it's for people who are not on transfusions. Because if you are on transfusions, you're probably on chelators. It's tricky.
Okay, so we talked about kids versus adults. Are there differences when it comes to nutrients for men and women?
Not really. And the only thing I would say is that if a woman is experiencing a pregnancy, it's really important to make sure that she finds a prenatal vitamin that doesn't have iron in it. And then also, if a male or female, either male and females, take a multivitamin, which sometimes we recommend if somebody doesn't have a really healthy diet and is trying their best, and maybe they have food access problems or they have financial issues or whatever, we may recommend a multivitamin. Try to find a multivitamin without iron. And typically that might be a men's multivitamin. There are multivitamins for men that don't contain iron. So that would be another thing to watch out for.
And I did want to ask you about multivitamins specifically. I know as a society in America, a lot of us are under the impression that we should be taking a multivitamin. How does that apply to those of us with Thal and PKD? Is a multivitamin a good idea, a bad idea? What do you recommend?
I recommend it on an individual basis based on your diet. Now, with that said, honestly, probably most of us don't have a perfect diet. Ideally, you would go see a registered dietitian and get an individualized plan to help you have that better diet. And what a dietitian can do is sit down with you and go, okay, first of all, let's look at like your actual measurements, your anthropometrics, your blood values on these nutrients. What are you eating now? And what's your goal? What's your health conditions? And where should we be? And then they'll make a plan for you. And they can help you with some of these decisions and maybe throw in there that you have lactose intolerance or you're vegan or whatever. So they can make a plan individual to you. So that would be the ideal situation, is to have a registered dietitian visit with you. And then they could decide whether or not you need a multivitamin. If you are not able to do that, or until you are able to meet with a dietitian and you know that you probably aren't getting a good diet, then it would probably be safe to take a multivitamin. There is some research that shows that in healthy people, multivitamins does not extend lifetime, but that's in healthy people. And I would consider ourselves to be people that have chronic diseases. And so for us, it may be beneficial to have a multivitamin. We don't have the research to prove that, but it's not going to hurt us. So for me, it would be a good decision to take a multivitamin.
I do want to jump into vitamins a little bit more, but before we do, I want to ask you about, we were talking about food and what foods to eat. Organic food versus non-organic. Does that make a big difference when it comes to nutrients, if we have access to it?
I know there's going to be people that disagree with me, but for the sake of facts, there is not enough evidence to indicate that organic foods are superior to traditionally grown foods in terms of health benefits. The more important point is getting healthy foods. And so people should focus on foods that are minimally processed over getting organic foods. There are a number of organic foods that are highly processed, and I would actually not call them healthy. So my focus is to be on nutrient-dense, minimally processed foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, high quality, at an affordable price, so that you can get those items into your diet. And having access to that is a priority over organic foods. That is the evidence. Now, if you decide that you want to contribute, there is quite a bit of evidence to suggest that it is environmentally better to purchase organic foods, and I wholeheartedly support that. I would also suggest, if you're concerned about organics and environmental situations, that you consider going to more plant-based diets.
Okay, so let's go back into vitamins. I know you already touched on a little bit, but which specific vitamins and or minerals are on the spotlight for Thal patients?
Folate, which most of us probably take, but folate helps with red blood cell development, and it is found in dark green leafy vegetables, Brussels sprouts, beans, peas, and it's fortified in a lot of countries. Grains are fortified with folate. So many of us take folic acid already. Our doctors have asked us to take that, and usually we take it at 1 milligram a day or 5 milligrams a week. So I'm guessing that's already on our radar, and it should stay on our radar, quite frankly. But there's not a lot of evidence to support it. It's just a practice because the folate is involved in red blood cell production. So that's one. We talked about iron. I talked a little bit about calcium, and then zinc is another really important nutrient, and it is a trace mineral. It's important for immunity, and it's really important for growth. So that's an important nutrient for rapid growth, which is what people with PKD and also thalassemia, we have rapid cell growth, bone density, puberty development, and it's found in foods like beef, chicken, beans, yogurt, oysters, if you like oysters. And what happens is that people who are on chelators can become deficient And people who have iron overload can become deficient in zinc. And so the problem that can create is it can contribute to weaker bones, or it can contribute to delayed puberty, or it can be a result of iron overload. And because it's so important to growth and immunity, we need to have zinc. That's why really focusing on zinc and protein are buddies. They hang out together. And so making sure that you have good sources of protein and it can become a problem for people who are vegetarian or vegan. Actually, zinc, B12, and protein are like they hang out together. So that's where when it's like people who are vegan or vegetarian, I worry about those 3 nutrients, making sure that they have enough of those. And so that's why, again, like a dietitian would review your diet, review your intake, make sure you have enough of those key nutrients. And then even if you aren't a vegetarian or vegan, we would want to make sure that Thal patients are having enough in their diet. And the best way, again, is by just including foods. You might need a zinc supplement, but I wouldn't take one until you've actually been tested for zinc deficiency.
And what foods can we find those in?
It's just a lot of beef and chicken, and so a lot of things that vegetarians are, oh, I don't want to eat that, or I can't eat that, or whatever. But that's why it can show up in people who don't eat meat.
Can beans be a supplement for that? Or
beans do, yeah, and that's why I feel like beans are like the superfood, especially for vegans and vegetarians. And there's so many different kinds of beans, so many different kinds, and you can do so many fun things with beans that if you don't eat meat, that you should really rely on beans. And then also soy.
That's it for part 1 on our series of nutrition. I hope you enjoyed everything Tamara had to say and share with us. We're so grateful to have her on. But if you still have questions, we have answers. So stay tuned for our next episode when we dive back into nutrition in thalassemia. And don't forget to tell your friends, colleagues, and people you know in the community all about Thal Pals and share on social media. Thanks again to Agios for sponsoring Thal Pals, and we'll see you next time.